All right. So when we talk about the structure of something like a house, we have something concrete to picture, the walls, the framing, things like that. And one of the ways that authors build structure within their writing is to think about the cohesiveness of it, what ties it together. So in other words, cohesion is kind of like the walls, the frame of the house that kind of puts it together and contains everything within this one building. So when we're talking about cohesion, we're looking at really every level of the paragraph. And as writers, we want to strive for that kind of cohesion because one, it helps us better understand and it makes sense. And that logical structure is more persuasive because it's more approachable. So that's really what we want to strive for. But as we're reading, there are certain things we can look for too. So I have this kind of broken down into the sentence level, paragraph level, and the essay level. So let's kind of go through each part of a paper and talk about what authors do to build cohesion in that section. So sentence level. It's kind of difficult to build cohesion within a sentence because within a sentence, you don't need a lot of bridges made. It just kind of needs to make sense, right? But there are some ways. One familiar one is to think about pronouns and antecedents. Now, you're probably like, I don't even remember what an antecedent is. I don't even remember what a pronoun is. But pronoun and antecedent is just basically when one of those words like I, we, us replaces the noun that was previously referenced. So when we're talking about cohesion, using words like this or he or she is creating cohesion back to what you were originally talking about, okay? So that combination of pronouns with their antecedent in a sentence or in multiple sentences is one way that you're building a cohesive, unified sentence or paragraph. There are also the transitional words that you're probably familiar with. Words like additionally, similarly, in contrast, all of those that you've heard and used in the past, those are what I would call a sentence level cohesion strategy because they kind of create that bridge between sentences so they're not disjointed. So that's kind of what we're talking about with sentence level cohesion. Now let's talk about how does that expand to an entire paragraph. And the first thing is this line of reasoning that you just watched the video about. A really strong claim, if you start with a strong assertion, strong main point or claim, and your reasoning kind of keeps building back to that claim, that's a great way to build cohesion. So for an example, if I make my claim and then I present evidence and then I connect that evidence back to the claim and explain with that commentary of how that evidence is proving my claim, I'm developing a line of reasoning. And if you can do that consistently in a body paragraph, you're building what's called a cohesive paragraph. There's also this idea of connectivity, which is kind of what I mean when I'm talking about line of reasoning as well. It means that sentences are kind of progressively building on the last to defend the stated claim. As a teacher, sometimes I've read paragraphs where it feels like if I pulled those sentences apart, they could be in multiple different papers, or there's no real correlation from sentence to sentence. So when we're talking about cohesiveness within a paragraph, we're looking for that connectivity. Does sentence 3 in the paragraph build on sentence 2? Does sentence 8 build on sentence 7, which built on 6, which built on 5, and so forth? There's that connectivity where each idea is expanding on the last one. And that's kind of paragraph level cohesion. Now, when we're talking about the entire essay level, these are things we've talked about before and some we haven't talked about before. But the best way to build a really cohesive essay is to have that strong defensible thesis at the beginning. You have it at the beginning and you keep coming back to it in every body paragraph. That's creating cohesion. That's why when we talk about commentary, I'm constantly telling you, relate back to the thesis, relate back to the claim, because we're striving for that cohesiveness, that unified feeling within a paragraph, so that as you read through the essay, everything has that anchor within the thesis that it can link back to. Another way to kind of build essay level cohesion or to recognize essay level cohesion is what I made it myself, but this idea of a trickle down strategy. So when we talk about trickle down, I want you to visualize a window and it's raining. When you see water coming down a window, like in the car wash or outside, whatever it is, you notice that water doesn't just come straight down. on the window pane. It kind of weaves and flows and moves and kind of has this disjointed journey down the essay. When we're talking about using a trickle down effect for cohesion, we kind of still get that jagged line, but those points of connection or those turns in the water stream are different unifying principles or things. So let me explain with a few examples I have written here. One example would be is if you are writing a persuasive essay about school uniforms, you could keep coming back to this big idea of conformity and individuality. And if you're doing that multiple times in each paragraph throughout the entire essay, you're kind of creating that path just like the water takes down a window. And it's kind of creating not so much this web, but this little track that moves through the paper. And that's something that is often used to build that sophistication that we want to see in that final point on the rubric and has been done really well in essays in the past. The last way to do it is very similar, same strategy, but instead of maybe talking about a big idea, you might talk about what makes the point you're making relevant. If you can keep coming back to that big picture, to that relevance for the reader, for society, for humanity, and you kind of do it consistently throughout the paper, again, you're going to get that little path, like the water falls down, and you're going to get that connection throughout the entire essay that creates cohesion.